Hello, everyone, and welcome to, as always, a very dimly lit episode of Music of the Week. I have about only 6 albums to go through for this one, so I'm going to try and get through them as quickly as I can, because there's 6 of them, quite a bit. We begin with Drowned in Sulphur, also my cat say by the way. We begin with Drowned in Sulphur and what I think is their third album or something, Dark Secrets of the Soul. Very sort of like black metal leaning deathcore sound, very like big and punchy and heavy, and highest grade of the episode as well, gets an A. Really enjoyed a lot of the assets of this one. I think the production is just really good. It pumps up the sound in quite some nice ways. Instrumentation, it just does not stop rattling at you. It's not the most diverse thing in terms of that instrumentation, though I do think it can feel like a bit like it flows too much, because that can be a thing, apparently, I say so now. And the lyrical theme is supposedly of like the darkness of human nature, which I think is fine, but there's not much versatility in the lyrics. But that's not really the focus. The focus is just how big the instrumentation is, how much it slaps you right across the face. The production's really good. I think the pacing for the most part is also really good. I like that it's consistent at the very least. But my favorite song on the album isn't even like one of the heavy songs, because there's 11. There's about 10 songs. Like 2 of them are like build up sort of instrumental tracks, but they work well. But my favourite song is one called Lotus, which uses acoustic guitars and clean vocals and has an amazing guitar solo to close out the song. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of says something, but it still goes heavy when it needs to, and the performances are bloody great as well. Not really a lot of faults with this album, even like the theming and sound, even they're not terrible. In fact, they are quite good. I just wish that they did a little bit more with it, but what they do with the album. Also, it can feel like a bit too much at times, but yeah, it's still really fucking great. Next, we have Green Day with their new album, Saviors. So this is my 6th album after, let's see, the Uno Dos Tres trilogy, which was bad, Revolution Radio, which was good, and then Father of All Motherfuckers, which was actually okay. I didn't hate it as much as those people. I'm giving this one a B+, though. I do think it is Green Day sort of like back on their more nostalgic vibe. I don't know, I didn't really check them out. And when they first started dropping, I became familiar with them on when they dropped American Idiot and just assumed they were always like more political leaning, but boy, how wrong I was for the most part. I will say off the top of my head, I think this is one of Billie Joe Armstrong's best vocal performances. His guitar riffs are still good. I think the band still have that like undeniable chemistry, and they still sound like they're having fun even though they're all in their 50s now. They still sound young, which is weird. They still look young too. They have surprisingly good genes. But they've been at this for such a long time, and they really showcase that. I think the writing is sort of one of the weird sticking points, because it does have a lot of versatility to it, but it doesn't have a ton of consistency. There are like political leaning songs, there's personal leaning songs, there's songs about fatherhood and things like that, and it does lean into more of a mature thing, but it's not really like something that gets you in the emotional core, I think. But then again, it doesn't really need to, and that's never really fully been Green Day's MO anyway, and I understand that, but still, yeah, it would have been nice to put that up a bit more. I like the rest for the most part. I do think the structuring is another sort of small point that I'm a little bit weirded out by, because there's a lot of there's 15 songs on this, and a few of them just feel really short, and it does feel like they're just trying to get through them, like they just stuck them on there because they thought they'd be good ideas, and maybe they could have been cut off, but at the same time, most of the songs are still just really fun, and I think that's what kept me from giving this album a lower grade, is just the fact that it's so goddamn fun. It's also really well produced too, and I think that's a big help. It's got really good production, very clean, very smooth. Not the most organic thing, but it does neaten things up a really, really good amount. Again, Billy is a great singer. I think this is one of his better vocal performances. Good riff work, mostly good pacing, it's just a fun time too, so go listen to it if you want a fun time. Next we have Hot Garbage and their new album, Precious Dream. These are I don't remember exactly where they're from. I think they're from the UK or Canada. I think they're from Canada. This is a sort of very, very fuzzy, psychedelia-infused post-punk sort of thing, and I'm giving it a B-, not because of the sound. I actually quite like the sounds that they try to work in, and B- is not like the lowest grade. It's not even the lowest grade this episode. Spoiler alert, but I do really like the riff work. I think the performances are pretty good as well, and I think the production is nice and dense. However, the production also feels a bit weird. It feels like they focus more on the riffs than they do on the vocals. I like what the lyrical themes are supposed to be, which are dread and loss and solitude, but there's a lot of really repeated wordage with it, and it just doesn't fit. It's sort of like it has this, but it has this going against that album. It's what this album feels like, but mostly I do like what it does have. The pacing is consistent, and it flows well enough, but it doesn't really push itself either. There's not a lot of versatility in the tracks. I mean, it is a bit predictable in some places, but it's not a bad kind of predictable. I think the genre mixing might be my favourite thing about the album, like, psychedelic-infused post-punky stuff with really fuzzy riffs is nice. Production, mostly handled well, but a bit crushing in some areas, and again, weird focus on the instrumentation over the vocals, but for the most part I did like this album, and I think this is band still early into their career, so it's something I'll give the benefit of the doubt. Still, I do recommend it. Next we have Neck Deep and their new album, which is self-titled, so it's just Neck Deep, and I'm giving this one also a B+, and I say this without any intention of it being a pun. This is the most Neck Deep album I think I've ever heard from Neck Deep. It is their classic punk-punky stuff, really good riffs, a lot of energy, a lot of catchy charm and fun. Ben Barlow is a really good vocalist. I think this might be his best performance, honestly. I think the rest of the band members are great as well, and I honestly think the production is really nicely done too. The sort of odd points I have with it are some of the structuring and some of the writing as well. It is a bit cliche in what it tries to do. It's nothing new in terms of Neck Deep writing. When it comes to lyricism, there's themes of breakups mostly, and anxiety, and a little bit of political stuff. And it's weird that they tried that, because my favourite song on the album is titled "We Need More Bricks," which is sort of a political song, kind of. But it's also just a really fucking good one, and it's probably the best pace song as well. Overall, though, the pacing is still a bit off, and it ends with such a strange track. Moody Weirdo has to be one of the most bang-average closing songs I've ever heard for a pop-punk album, but it's Neck Deep. It's their first album in 4 years, which is also a bit boggling of why it sounds like it does for the most part, but I really like it, it's because it's Neck Deep, it's got good instrumentation, takes a few risks here and there as well, and the production's really good, and the performances are as charming as always, and it's nothing I've ever been really able to fault the band for. They always try and put a smile on my face. So yeah, it's an album if you do feel a bit like crap. It is an album that's going to make you feel a bit happy. So I recommend giving it a spin for that alone. Next we have Sleater-Kinney with their newest album, Little Rope. I have covered this band a fair few times. I think I covered their first album back in Not their first album, the first time I covered them was back in 2019. And then I covered their last album, which came out 2022 or something? 2021. But I'm giving this one an A-. And honestly, this one I listen back to the most, probably, even more than Drain and Sulphur's album, which is probably my favourite album of the past weekend. But yeah, there was just something that kept me coming back to this one, and I think the reason why was because when I first heard it, I thought, oh, it's a really good Sleater-Kinney album. But when I looked in a bit more into detail, aka I actually looked at the Wikipedia page and found out what the main driving theme was, I think it started ringing a bit truer for me. Honestly, I think the riff work is really, really good, eclectic and versatile, and the performances of Corinne Tucker and Carrie Brownstein are brilliant. They have an undeniable chemistry, and it's not really something that anyone's going to take away from them anytime soon. The drumming is really good too. There's a lot of really good drumming. Obviously, it's not the band members that do it, because there's only two of them, and they only play vocals and guitars, but the session musicians they got did really good jobs too. Production-wise is kind of where it feels a bit weird. Some of the editing, the sound editing especially, is a bit off, and it feels indecisive in which ways it wants to go with it, and sometimes the structuring can feel a bit like we're just trying to get to the next thing, which is weird because when they do let themselves flow a bit more, for example the song Dress Yourself, probably the best song on the album, they allow themselves to really lean into that, and I think it is counterbalanced by the band's performances, how good the riffs are, and also the writing and the themes, the very dark themes of grief and loss, which ring true because one of the band members, I don't remember which one, lost a family member, in the years between this album and their previous one. So that became a very heavy topic for them, and they weren't even sure that they were going to even work on a new album after their previous one dropped. So I'm glad that they did, though, and I think this album is really, really goddamn exceptional. And finally, we have a sort of new band, Split Knuckle, who hail from the UK, with their new album, Breathing Through the Wound. Not, as I almost called it during my Discord review, Breaking Through the Wound. It's called Breathing Through the Wound. And this one gets the lowest grade of the episode, which is a C+. So it's a hardcore punk album, you know, usually my favourite genre of music, and the thing is, this is about still in its infancy, very much. It's only their second album, it's their first full-length album in 8 years, and the first release of any kind since an EP they dropped back in 2018, so I don't know what the hell they've been doing in the time between, but there's just a lot of facets of this that kind of start to fall apart. I do admit, right, if it just focused on the heavy aspect of it, and that's really, really good stuff on the album, I think they would have done just fine, you know? And I do like the political theming, but it comes off as try hard and edgy, and there's way too many examples of them just saying fuck or cunt without any, like, added context, you know? I do think the performances are really good, especially the drummer Matt Bullis, I think his name is. He is a fantastic drummer. Like, his accuracy is so, so good. I think the production is a bit too uncooked for me. It does not really go in a lot of places, but then again, this is still like a very early album for them. And the structuring is probably my biggest issue with the album because it actually tries to do different things, but it handles them in a really bad way. It feels like they've got all this dynamite in their hands and they just bungle it over and over again. There's a couple of songs which are like 6.5 minutes long, and the first 3 minutes, like the first halves of both of those songs, excuse me, are like genuinely good, really well paced stuff, and then they just have like long instrumental parts for no reason, and they have random instrumental tracks as well. And they're trying to do too much at once, and I feel like they should have split it into different songs because they didn't really do that a lot. Or they could have just kept it short and simple and sweet. But this is still a band in its early stages, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I still recommend you give it a try, but there is a fair few issues with it, and I think if they try to streamline it a bit more, I think they need a producer who can like keep them in line and tell them, you know, this is definitely the route that they should go. But as it stands, I think it's got some really good moments to it personally, and I still recommend giving it a spin. So that will about do it, and I'll do the three things I'm doing now with Music of the Week as of 2024. The ranking system, from least favourite to most favourite. So, Split Knuckle with Breathing Through the Wounds, Hot Garbage with Precious Dream, Neck Deep with Neck Deep, Green Day with Saviour, Sleater-Kinney with Little Rope, and Draining Soul with Dark Secret of the Soul. But as always, go and listen to all of these yourself. As for my favourite song of all of them, it's close, but I'm gonna have to go, simply because I've listened to it the most of them, probably We Need More Bricks by Neck Deep. I don't know, I'm more likely to go over that one and just vibe to it than I am Lotus by Draining Sulfur, for example. Favourite album cover there goes to Split Knuckles Breathing Through the Wound. It looks like the cover of a horror comic book. It just looks fucking badass, you know? It actually looks like it was drawn that way. But that'll about do it. I will see you all hopefully tomorrow night for PVW versus AVW. We've got the card sorted. I just need to iron the shit out with my bookers. So I'll see you, bookers, not boogers, bookers. And I'll see you all, tomorrow for that. And then on Sunday for a special video, because there's no UFC card this weekend. So I've got a video plan that I've been wanting to do since around Christmas. So I'm going to be doing that. So look out for that. And as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye-bye.